Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Today we'll talk about social justice and the good life. This seems like a very simple pairing, and at first glance, this feels like two separate ideas. The good life is personal. This is your happiness, your success, your peace. And social justice, from the term, sounds societal. This is our systems, our fairness, institutions. But what we're going to try to talk about today is our ability to live a good life shaped by the kind of society that we live in. Let's think about it for a little bit. When we imagine our good life, what comes to mind? Does this mean stable income, time with family, freedom to choose your career, or safety? These are purely individual things. They're constrained and enabled by the different structures that we live in, the economy, education systems, labor markets, and our government. Here in the Philippines, we see that many Filipinos aspire for financial stability, but structural realities like limited local job opportunities will have a lot of our Filipino workers move overseas. So we're going to try to think about, is this good life still good if it requires separation from our family? We are asking here, under social justice, who gets access to opportunities, who is excluded, and what systems create these patterns. We're going to go through this session thinking about, is the good life something you earn alone, or is this something that society must make possible? So the big questions we have here, I what is inequality? Why is it important? What is the good life, and what is social justice, and why is it also important? We start off with what the government envisions for us as the good life. This comes from a plan that they had na by 2040 all Filipinos should have these values. The government says that Filipinos are strongly rooted, matatag tayo. Filipinos live together and there is work life balance, so there's time to spend with family, even for members who work. They imagine that on the weekends, families and friends enjoy time together in parks and recreational centers. Filipinos live in a high trust society with a strong sense of community, and there are volunteer opportunities and Filipinos who spend time to serve the community, help others who are in need, and contribute to various causes. The government also wants that Filipinos are comfortable, maginhawa. No one is poor, no one is hungry. Filipino families live in comfortable homes with the desired amenities and secure tenure. Families and friends are within reach because transport is convenient and affordable, and we can take vacations within the country and abroad. Children should also receive quality education so that they realize their full potentials and become productive members of society. There should be decent jobs that bring sustainable income and have opportunities for entrepreneurship. The last part of the governance vision is that Filipinos are secure, panatag tayo. Filipinos feel secure over their entire lifetime. They're expected to live long and enjoy a comfortable life upon retirement, and there are resources to cover unexpected expenses, and there are savings. Filipinos feel safe all over the country, and Filipinos trust their government because it is free of corruption and provides service to all its citizens equally. So this is part of the plan of the Philippine government by 2040. It focuses on a different dimension of well-being. Matatag, stability, there's looking at our relationships and our time. Maginhawa focuses on the material conditions. Panatag is looking at long-term stability. And while the government recognizes that the good life is made of many different dimensions, kailangan may time tayo for your family, we have enough resources, we feel secure, they know that this is including all the different social, emotional, and structural factors. But the question that I want us to think about is how accessible and how realistic are these to us, the average Filipino? Right now, ideal yung family togetherness, but our reality challenges this. I know a lot of you are studying away from your families. Many of us know an OFW who is striving to make a better life for their family. And we also see here na maginhawa good transport facilities. One reason why we're not meeting today is because we have a transport strike where our Filipino drivers are having difficulties living day to day. So this vision is very comprehensive, but the gap between this vision and the reality that we're living in is reflecting structural inequality. This is where social justice becomes essential. It's not enough to talk about what we are looking for in a good life, but we must also ensure that people have fair access to all of these. This moves us to our next part. We'll have to talk about privilege. Privilege is misunderstood because of the many memes that we hear, but it's misunderstood because it's invisible to those who have it. We'll talk more about it when we're back in class, but we wanted you to look at the different privileges that people have for our activity that we had. And we're going to think about privileges as unearned advantages tied to identity, background, or social position. Important here to note is that these are unearned advantages. It's not about how much effort or talent we have, but it's about where we started off in our life. So let's imagine walking through life carrying resources you did not consciously pack. This looks like access, safety, representation, and networks. A lot of us carry this invisible backpack full of tools, while many of us also carry almost nothing. But society looks at both of them and often evaluates them as if they started at the same time and equally. Dito lang sa Pilipinas, let's consider language. Being fluent in English provides access to better education, corporate jobs, and global opportunities. But not all of us are have the same exposure growing up. What appears as competence in the speaking and the fluency of English is often just privilege in disguise. Let's also look at those of us who live in Manila versus those of us who grew up in the provinces. Being born here in Manila has gives you different access to education, healthcare, and employment. And this isn't something that's earned by you. This is inherited through circumstances. We're trying to say here that privilege doesn't mean that your life is easy. It means that there are barriers that are absent. You will struggle, but you're not struggling against those specific constraints. The danger when we are ignoring what privilege is, when we believe that success is purely hard work, we forget that there are barriers to the different things that we want in life. This will lead to blaming individuals for the different systemic failures that they experience. We often hear about this on the internet, but keep saying we want to check your privilege. It's misunderstood. Lagi siyang sinasabing parang attack. It's really a practice of reflexivity. Checking your privileges is asking us to recognize three things. Is that one, our experiences are not universal. Two, we cannot speak for all members of a group. And three, our perspectives are shaped by our position in society. We see different examples here in the slides. We have people asking, ba't kailangang holiday pang Eid? Wala rin naman pasok kapag regular holidays tulad ng Christmas. I don't want to talk about being gay with the pupils. Why can't I just focus on normal relationships? Kung may menstrual leave ang mga babae, dapat meron din katulad ng monthly leave para sa mga lalaki. These discussions are revealing how dominant perspectives are trying to normalize themselves. Think about the last time you were asking yourself these kinds of questions. Here in the Philippines, super dalas itong mangyari. You might hear one of our titos, one of our titas sa mga family gatherings, they would start off na, hindi ako sexist, hindi ako galit sa bakla. Pare-parehong tingin ko sa lahat. This ignores structural realities like different gender pay gaps or expectations placed on women, placed on the LGBT sector. When we check our privilege, we're here pausing and asking, what assumptions am I making from this? And who is missing from this perspective? It's very important, especially for those who will be in positions of power, teachers, managers, policymakers. And when these decisions are made without considering diverse experiences, this will reproduce inequality. This brings us back to a few lessons ago where we talked about the WPR, what's the problem represented to be. When we fail to check our privilege, we misdiagnose problems. We don't get to see the whole picture. When we frame poverty as laziness instead of structural inequality, we will produce ineffective solutions that won't really address how poverty is. When we check privileges, we're not shutting ourselves up, we're not silencing ourselves. We're here trying to expand our awareness so our voice becomes more informed. Now we look at the intersectionality of privilege and oppression. Intersectionality tells us that identity is not singular, it's very layered. And these layers interact in complex ways. A person like you is not just female, it's not just poor, it's not just LGBTQ. You can be all of these at once, and each layer shapes the experience differently. Imagine two different people. One is a wealthy woman, and one is a poor woman. Both of them experience gender inequality by virtue of being a woman, but the second, the poor woman, also faces economic disadvantage. While they're both women, their lived realities are not the same. Imagine also if we add a third person to that group. We think of a rural indigenous woman here in the Philippines. They are facing economic marginalization, geographic isolation, and cultural discrimination. None of these are separate struggles. While you can try to address each one by themselves, we know that all of these intersect and compound upon another. Intersectionality is reminding us that privilege and oppression can coexist. A person can be privileged in one domain but disadvantaged in another. Think of a middle class gay man and a highly educated woman. The middle class gay man may have economic privilege, but they are facing discrimination based on their sexuality. A highly educated woman will still face gender bias even in high leadership roles. This intersectionality is challenging simplistic narratives. It tells us to stop looking at just one group and saying this group has it worse. We want to think with nuance. We want to think how the systems interact to shape these unique experiences. For social justice, this is critical. When we make policies that ignore intersectionality, these often fail because they assume there's a uniform experience within all of the groups. We want to think that inequality is multidimensional and understanding it requires layered thinking. I want you also to think about opportunity gaps. The concept of an opportunity gap is looking at how people, despite their abilities, don't always have the same access to privileges. This emphasizes that differences in success are not primarily about ability, but about available opportunities. Two students may have equal intelligence and motivation. All of you guys are in UP, so I assume you guys are in the same level of intelligence. But if one of the students has better access to quality education, mentorship, and resources, while the other one doesn't, these outcomes will diverge. Very important to hear in the Philippines because very evident ang opportunity gap. We can see how different ang mga galing sa public school versus mga galing sa private school. There are different topics that people are more interested in when you have access to private schools. But there's a different depth of knowledge when you're in public schools. We also see that there's a difference between urban versus rural access to education. And even those of us who went to review centers for the UPCAT or are going to review centers for the board exams, the access to these review centers will be widely different depending on where you are growing up or where you're studying. This mean that you as an individual don't have potential. This means that there are structural differences depending on your own privilege. The opportunity gap is explaining why inequality persists across generations. If our parents lack the resources, the children start with a disadvantage. This creates a cycle that's difficult to break. So paulit-ulit na lang na pag walang kaya yung magulang, yung anak natin hindi din maging economically influential enough to change how their own children would grow. The opportunity gap challenges the idea of a level playing field. In real life, this playing field is uneven. Some of us start far behind, some of us start super in front. So when we are going to evaluate success, we must think what opportunities were available to that individual and what barriers existed that prevented them to reach the success that they want. We're looking more at inequality. So, inequality here is the unequal distribution of resources, opportunities, and privileges. What's important to note, though, is that inequality is multidimensional. It's not just on economic factors. We're looking at inequality in their social lives, their status, their networks, in the cultural dimension, the different norms that they know, the different representations they have in media and in policies, spatial dimensions, their access geographically to better education, to better healthcare, environmental, their exposure to risk, political, the voice that they have and that the power they control, and knowledge, their access to information and education. So when we think about inequality, we should know that hindi lang siya poor versus rich. This also looks at how different people live with different privileges. I'm going to show you here a graphic showing the Gini coefficient. This is a measure of income inequality. And what's scary to see here, this was in 2022. But in 2022, the Philippines is number one. Philippines ranked the highest inequality in the East and Southeast Asia. Having a high Gini coefficient isn't a good thing. This means that there's a large gap between the rich and the poor. This has real consequences. This tells us that there is limited social mobility. So pag pinanganak kang walang kaya, tatanda ka na walang kaya din. This also tells us that there's a concentration of wealth. While I don't have the statistics right now, we can see that a lot of the wealthy people are concentrated on one part of the Philippines. And we also see that the higher Gini coefficient leads to persistent poverty. In practical terms, this means that economic growth will not benefit everyone equally. The GDP may increase, but if wealth is concentrated among a small elite, the majority of us will not feel improvement in our daily lives. Kaya when we hear that the Philippines is in a golden age, is in economic progress, we don't feel that connected. We are disconnected from this narrative because we don't feel the growth of our economy. So we ask, if there is economic growth in the Philippines, where is this growth for? Who is this growth uh, affecting? Without addressing the inequality in our country, growth alone will not guarantee a better quality of life for all. Inequality is not just unfairness, it is also harmful to the society at large. It weakens the impact of economic growth on poverty reduction, and when wealth is concentrated on just an elite few, less people will benefit. Inequality will also lead to conflict and instability. When disparities become too visible, trust erodes and tensions rise. Third, it undermines institutions, and if people perceive systems as unfair, they lose trust in healthcare, education, and governance. Inequality also has environmental concerns. Unequal consumption patterns will lead to unsustainable resource use. In the Philippines, I invite you to look around and see that rising inequality is manifesting as real things in our lives. Political polarization, we see that people are attacking each other depending on their political beliefs because they see that there's a big inequality. There's also a big distrust in institutions. I'm sure that, like me, a lot of us don't really trust our government because they keep promising things that they are unable to give us or show us. We also see this in the strike that is happening now, and the difference in the social fragmentation that we have for those who work on the streets or jeepney drivers, and those who work in the government. So rising inequality paints a picture of our reality and tells us that there is something that's widely different from different groups. That's why we are trying to strive to as social justice. Social justice is a goal that we want to be fair and equitable with the distribution of our resources, opportunities, and privileges in our society. We're presenting social justice here as a response to the inequality that we have been experiencing. It's built on four pillars: equality, equity, inclusion, and participation. Equality, there should be equal rights and opportunities. Equity, there should be fair distribution based on the need of the person. Inclusion is the active integration of diverse groups. And participation is giving people a voice in the decision making. The distinction between equality and equity here is critical. Equality means giving everyone the same resources, but equity is trying to adjust the resources based on the person's need to ensure fair outcomes. In the Philippines, you see this a lot. There are ayudas, conditional cash transfers, and these are trying to address equity by only giving this to disadvantaged groups. Social justice here is trying to be fair to people, but trying to put this fairness in a context that's appropriate for them. Social justice is also built to reduce inequality. Uh, the UN has sustainable development goals, and goal number 10 is reducing inequality. While it is something that we're striving for as part of the SDG, we know that because everything's interconnected, inequality is mixed with poverty, mixed with gender equality and inclusion, mixed with the environment, mixed with health, mixed with conflict and access to justice. We're trying to see here that if we're trying to reduce inequality, we'll have to reduce everything else here. Inequality is not something we can solve in isolation, and it requires a systems approach. When we improve education without addressing poverty, we open up the opportunity gaps to people who can't access the education. When we try to promote gender equality without economic opportunities, this will limit the impact and make it feel like this is a token activity. Hindi natin nagagampanan yung kailangan natin gawin. So again, social justice isn't fixing just one thing. We're trying to look at a systems approach to make sure that all of these work in tandem together and we get to fix the problems together. So these are questions that we want to think about. Why do people resist equality? Why do we create change? How do we create change? And what differences does equality make? We're trying to see that these are questions that are very difficult to answer, You won't find an answer to this in one day, 1 week, 1 year. These are meant to help question the society that we live in while we navigate through it in our lives. So they're here on the screen, but they're not gonna be something na I can answer right now or you can answer. This has to be a constant question that while we navigate the world around us. We'll end today with three key insights. Inequality is multidimensional and intersectional. The consequences of inequality extend beyond individuals to society as a whole. Social justice is essential to achieve the good life. So we'll leave today with one question, not just a theoretical question, mas personal to. What role will you play in shaping a more just society? The good life is not something we pursue alone. It is something that we build together. I hope you guys have a good day and I'll see you next week. Bye.